Narcissists often live a very long life, don't they? Longer than their victims. And while that sounds like a blessing on the surface, it is their biggest curse. I'll prove that to you. Think about it for a minute. You start your life imagining you have it all under control, and then a day comes when you lose literally everything: money, people, children, and your own bodily freedom. How disempowering is that? For a narcissist, living a long life often means slowly losing every single thing that defines their self-worth. That is their karma. That is their reckoning, which is also satisfying, to be honest, because they do a lot that goes unanswered. They deserve what they go through. This is what I believe. I am Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. Welcome to my channel. The topic for today's episode is, why do narcissists live for such a long time? We're going to talk about the satisfying downfall of a narcissist. Before we get started, please consider subscribing to my channel, because as I always say, your subscription helps in spreading awareness about narcissistic abuse, and it keeps me going. As they age, everyone leaves them, you know that. Not because of some unavoidable tragedy, but because of the choices they make. I'm talking about the relationships they destroy, the lies they tell, and the love they drain from everybody around them. By the time they are in their final years, 99% of narcissists end up completely isolated. And while they may be still alive physically and emotionally, but spiritually, they are already dead. It's almost as if God extends their life, not as a gift, but as a final warning, a test, a chance. A series of chances to repent are given, to reflect, to change. But time and again, they fail. Even as they age, they continue to abuse. Even when bedridden, they treat the nurses caring for them as personal servants. They bark orders, complain incessantly, and demand attention. Would you believe my grandfather, who recently died, physically abused my grandmother, his wife, in his late 80s? That's who they are. That's how evil they are. They can't help themselves, and so their long life becomes a prison sentence. Now, why do narcissists live so long? I think there's more to it than just karma. On a physical level, they do not experience the same kind of stress that you and I do. While most people suffer from stress caused by empathy, one-sided empathy, care, and taking responsibility, narcissists cause stress. They're self-replenishing spring of it. They offload their emotional baggage onto others like energy vampires, draining the life force from everyone around them. Ironically, this allows them to stay alive longer, because they say stress is the number one killer in these times. Narcissists are not worn down by the weight of their emotions, the ones they run away from, because they project all of them onto you. You carry them. Spiritually, you may also wonder, why aren't they taken out of this world sooner? Maybe it's because the devil has no interest in competing with them. Both the devil and the narcissist are companions and champions of sadism, cruelty, and manipulation. The longer they live, the more their punishment grows. How so? Well, for every overt narcissist, there is a covert one. They make each other's life a miserable hell, like my mother does to my father and he does to her. For many covert narcissists, their karma comes in the form of sickness. Have you noticed that? Not a sickness that ends their life quickly, but one that drags on and on and on, leaving them utterly dependent on others. Imagine the horror of a narcissist losing the ability to control even their own body. They can't walk to the bathroom without help. They cannot clean themselves. They cannot even eat without someone feeding them. Their ego, which was once their source of power, shatters completely. But even in that state, they do not change. They do not reflect. And unfortunately, they do not repent. Instead, they double down on torturing the very people who may be trying to save them. And the tragic irony, Those caregivers, they're often the family's scapegoat, the person who has been hurt by the narcissist the most, but they are now showing up because nobody is willing to put up with the narcissist's bad behaviors. By this point, every family member wants to stay away. They are treated as a burden. People wish for their death. I remember my grandmother wanting God to take away the life of her ailing husband. She always complained to others, why isn't he dying? I mean, why? I'm just so done with him. He makes my life a living hell. When is it going to end? Their children, grandchildren, even their closest relatives avoid them. Of course, not out of cruelty, but because the narcissist's behavior has made it unbearable to stay around them. The narcissist is left to sit alone day after day with no one to talk to, no one to care for them emotionally, and no one to listen to their endless complaints. A visual comes to my mind. I remember my frail, fragile, mellowed down grandfather always looking through the window with those dried, hollow, psychopathic eyes, waiting for the angel of death to take him. Narcissists attract toxic people, and when those toxic friends realize the narcissist has nothing left to offer, no power, no money, no influence, they abandon them too. Even other manipulators have no use for a narcissist who is past their prime. My uncles, even my father, who was my grandfather's golden child, abandoned him completely. And so the narcissist is left in a vicious cycle of loneliness and bitterness. If by chance someone does visit them, they sit there ranting about the good old days, about how powerful and influential they once were. They will rehash the same stories, the same nonsense on steroids, over and over again, to the point where it becomes exhausting to even listen. People leave out of sheer fatigue. The narcissist becomes a drain, a black hole that consumes all the energy around them. One more memory comes up. My grandfather in his last days would sit, and me being an empath and terrified of him, would tell me all sorts of nonsense. Stories like when he was young and how people would be terrified of him and how he would shut people down, so on and so forth. Of no use. He could have just asked, do I need to change anything in myself? How did I do as a grandfather? None of that. It was still about him. Now is the interesting part. One of the most deserving punishments for a narcissist is the loss of their mind. I'm talking about dementia, Alzheimer's. These illnesses strip away the very thing they once used to manipulate others, their brain. The brain they relied on to gaslight, to deceive, to calculate every move, now betrays them. They forget the lies they told, the games they played, the tactics they so mastered. They can't even remember their own name, let alone maintain the web of manipulation they once thrived on. How can I say so? My father used to be terrified of forgetting things because he had told so many lies that he could not imagine living his life without the ability to keep them alive. Not that he has dementia, but I'm just sharing my experience with you. Someone who prided themselves on their intellect, their cunning, now unable to remember how to take their medication or feed themselves, that, my dear survivor, is the ultimate failure of their ego defenses, the ultimate undoing. They're forced to rely on the very people they once abused, and that is a humiliation to them. And you may think, oh, that's enough to break anybody down. No. Even in this state, they do not change. They don't find humility. They do not seek forgiveness of the people they have hurt. They cling to their old ways, even as their body and mind betray them. Now, you may be wondering, why does God allow any of this? Why not take them out of the world sooner? Because death would be too easy, wouldn't it? For a narcissist, the ultimate punishment is living. living with the consequences of their actions, living with the isolation they created, living with the broken relationships, the shattered trust, the emptiness they tried so hard to avoid. God does not punish them out of spite. He gives them chance after chance to repent. But you know how narcissists are. They, in their arrogance, believe they have done nothing wrong to repent for. They see themselves as victims, even as they lie in their bed all alone, unable to move, with no one by their side. They believe the world has wronged them, never realizing that they are the architects of their own suffering. So, my dear survivor, the next time you find yourself wondering why narcissists seems to live forever, why do they live for such a long time, remember this: their long life is not a reward. It's a sentence, a chance for them to see the truth, to repent, to change. But for most narcissists, they squander that chance. They choose to cling to their ego, their lies, their false sense of superiority, even as everything else crumbles around them. And that is the ultimate irony. The very traits they once used to dominate others become the chains that bind them in the end. They live long enough to see their empire of lies collapse, to see themselves abandoned by the very people they thought they controlled. They live long enough to face the truth that in their conquest to control the world, they lost control of themselves. That is what I have to say for today. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you in the next one. Until then, let the healing begin and continue.